Hi, welcome back to the Trial by Jennifer YouTube series on how to land that high paying job. And today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is negotiation and specifically what the acronym BATNA is. And so I think we have to kind of first go into um, this idea of negotiation and acknowledging that there are two parties in any negotiation, maybe more. And before I'm walking into the negotiation table, I think it's incredibly important to put myself in the shoes of each of those parties and see the negotiation from the point of view that they may be looking at it from. Um, and so let's define what BATNA is. BATNA stands for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And what exactly does that mean, right? So, a BATNA, it's a technique that is used to help us determine and secure the best alternatives in a negotiation. And my chief aim is to be prepared to face any scenario in a negotiation by reaching the most profitable agreement possible. And so, one of the best ways that I found to do this is to brainstorm. And when I'm doing this, I'm walking a mile in each party's shoes, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so what position are they coming to the table in? What's the ideal outcome for them? What's in this for them? And when I'm doing that, I'm gonna try to strategize every possible scenario around this negotiation, right? And really, no matter how silly it may sound or unrealistic, if it comes to mind, write it down and get clear about all of the different outcomes that could arise from these two parties going, or two or more, going into a negotiation over any particular agreement. And so I think it's incredibly important to play the tape forward and see where I can target the most desirable and the most profitable outcome. And so that's the one that I'm going to focus on. And I think it's really important to consider how can I secure a yes in this negotiation? Now, I think it's also equally as important to not confuse BATNA with the lower limit of our negotiation. Um, when I'm evaluating each possibility, I'm going to take in all of the pros and the cons. So, regardless of how unfavorable a particular outcome is or unlikely, it's still important to consider. That way, I come into the negotiation prepared for anything. This is going to be the position that I fall back on if I can't reach an agreement on my main goal. So I encourage and strongly urge anybody who is entering into a negotiation to never forget that there are two sides to any negotiation. And both parties have probably, taken some time to brainstorm or strategize what the best possible outcomes are. Not only is this going to give us valuable insight, but it's also going to help us determine what our best strategy is to reach the agreement. Let's talk about the timing of the BATNA. So I highly recommend, this is the last ditch resort. Do not show your hand of cards until every possible outcome has been on the table. You've exhausted all your options to close the negotiation in favor of your very first goal. And if you choose to play the BATNA card too early, you can't turn the time back. So you will be in a weaker negotiating position. So it's incredibly important to play that card at the right time. And the right time is going to be once you have adequately exhausted all of the other options for reaching your initial goal, which is going to be the one that is most profitable. Let's go back to this concept of confusing the BATNA with a lower limit. So, as I've talked about in our negotiation episode of this series, going into the negotiation with a very clear vision of what my ideal figure is going to look like and where I'm going to start the negotiation, which is going to be the higher range. And then what is the lowest possible number that I will consider before I walk away from the table? So a BATNA should not be confused with this lower limit, because the BATNA is a negotiating technique that is designed to achieve the best profitability possible, not the lowest offer that you're willing to accept. Again, it is a good idea to establish what that limit actually is and understand how low you're willing to go. But the BATNA is going to be a technique that is designed to help us essentially reach our goal. And I think it's incredibly important, as I touch on this subject, to be realistic about where each party stands in the negotiation. I think a lot of times the human mind has a tendency to either create a much worse scenario than what actually exists in reality, or a much more idealistic scenario. And so getting some clarity around what a real perspective might look like, this could be difficult to achieve. And so, at this point, as you're brainstorming, as you're preparing for sitting down at the negotiation table or having that phone call, it might be wise to bring a trusted professional who is somebody that you consider a confidant, that is a neutral or completely unrelated third party to this negotiation, to help you kind of get some clarity around what the opposing or other party might have in terms of realistic expectations and what their ideal outcome is. So, again, I think that it's important to list the possible alternatives that you're willing to accept in order from most to least profitable. So in this way, you're able to kind of see a whole range of different alternatives that are going to kind of cascade into your ideal scenario. That way you can compare realistically and decide, you're sufficiently prepared for any possible scenario. And what ends up happening is this ideally secures a greater possibility of reaching the ideal agreement. Another aspect to this is, you're keeping this BATNA in your back pocket, meaning, it's really ideally you reach the ideal agreement. It's a expansion of the pie rather than splitting it 50-50 or 51-49, etc. Instead, it's expanding the pie, but sometimes this doesn't always happen. And so the BATNA is creating these different options for you, right? As a person walking into the negotiation, about whether or not, this deal might be best left on the table. And maybe you go with a different alternative for resolving the problem that you're experiencing, and going with a completely different option. This technique allows people to walk away from the table because it provides more negotiating power. And I think too, it's researched and proven to be a very effective negotiation technique by Harvard University and their program on negotiation, and William Urey's Getting to Yes has also talked about BATNA. And so, we're looking at very credible resources in terms of what a BATNA is, how it can be used for, how to determine what the options in your BATNA are, and when to use it. And so I feel particularly excited about sharing this with you because, again, negotiation oftentimes leaves people uh, feeling like they got the short end of the stick, or perhaps, maybe they were a bit too aggressive, or, they have to walk away from the table entirely. But I think when we come prepared with a clear vision of what every possible outcome could be and where the other parties or party may be coming from, we're increasing our chances of success for everybody to get exactly what they wanted. I think that in terms of clarity with the BATNA, it is crucial to write it down. That way, it's not occupying precious real estate in your mind. And talking it through and practicing the negotiation with somebody. A lot of times, building confidence in a new skill or technique is found through muscle memory and through repetition. And so I can't stress the importance of running through a few different um, scenarios of this negotiation with a friend or someone that you trust, just to get a feel for how they might respond and the position that they may take, so that you're prepared, because I think a lot of times people may get up in their head about um, you know being intimidated or fearful of somebody coming in really hot with a negotiation. And ideally, if there's a lot of resistance, I don't know. I think a lot of people might say keep trying, but I'm of the school of thought that, like, at the end of the day, if there's a whole lot of resistance and trying and struggling to figure it out, beyond what feels exploratory and full of curiosity, you know, I really have to ask myself at that point, is this worth the time and energy, and how important is this to me? And again, what are my other alternatives? And so thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of How to Land a High Paying Job. Again, my name is Jennifer Butterfield, your host. And next week, I'm going to be covering our last episode of this series, which is going to be overcoming challenges and staying motivated. This will be a really exciting topic. And so I look forward to finishing this series off on a high note, and I will see you all next week.